Welcome to Procurement Says No, episode 6. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning. We've made it this far. Episode 6.
Episode 6. Yes, and it's bloody cold here. We were just talking about it being the end of summer at the last episode, which seems so long ago, and now it's freezing here.
That's because you live in the frozen north.
Yes, indeed.
In the Midlands, it's hearty and warm. No, it's not actually. It was icy and frosty this morning.
So we have another episode full of procurement goodness for you all. We have in the news, we have our second in our series of Ask Rich and Ed. We have a special guest star, Nick Ford, who's going to talk to us about stakeholder management. So, all exciting stuff, I think you'll agree.
I'm sure they do.
So firstly, in the news, the US has allowed South Korean chip makers to indefinitely supply factories in China, posted by Will Phillips. Several large electronics manufacturers will now be allowed to supply US chip equipment to factories they run in China without the need for US approval, after a waiver granted to South Korean chip makers was extended indefinitely. 1-year waivers were initially granted to firms in October last year, but the US Department of Commerce has now indefinitely waived its restrictions on semiconductor equipment manufacturers in South Korea. According to South Korea's Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs, this will ensure uncertainties about South Korean semiconductors operations and investment in China have been greatly eased. Samsung and HK Hynix have already been informed about the changes. US politicians, however, have raised concerns, with US Senator Marco Rubio saying this will allow these foreign chip makers to do business freely with the People's Republic of China. These waivers will deliver sensitive technology to Beijing on a silver platter. The Chinese Communist Party is executing an all-out campaign of subsidies, threats, and technology theft to build its semiconductor industry. Hell.
You know what? They've used the wrong phrase there because they said silver platter. They should say silicon wafer.
Oh,
get in there.
1 minute you can't use them, next minute you can.
Well, a couple of thoughts on that. One, they can't use all of the stuff because of ITAR, which is defence regulations in the US, similar in the UK with CECC. So there's probably restrictions that they're not talking about. Second is suggest some sort of de-escalation in trade issues between the US and China and the rest of us and China, I think. That would suggest that there's a little bit of diplomacy going on in the background, I suspect.
Let's hope so, because it would be good to have a bit of global trade going on. And let's just have free trade everywhere. Woo. Global GDP would be all the better for it, wouldn't it, Ed?
So you're not a Marxist-Leninist then, Rich?
No, not anymore. Any news from you, Ed?
Yeah, so a couple of things. This one's from CIPS Research. That's the Centre for Advanced Procurement Studies, I think it's known as. They're were based in Arizona, and they provide all sorts of statistics information for procurement. It's sort of seat of learning for procurement in the United States. And they've recently conducted a survey, 11th of October. They announced that the top 5 software solutions being used for sourcing and procurement are, and all our listeners will be surprised by this.
Is it Zip?
No, it's not Zip. The top 5 are SAP Ariba, Coupa BSM.
Yay.
Well, I don't know what BSM stands for, because in the UK, BSM is a learner driving school.
Woo!
British School of Motoring. So I don't know if it's Coupa have merged with the British School of Motoring to diversify. Anyway, Coupa, as we knew them, I know they were...
It's just bullshit management.
I think they could be suing you now. I think you better set your limited company up and get your protection in place. So we've got SAP Ariba, we've got Coupa BSM, Microsoft Azure.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't really talk about Microsoft, particularly in the procurement context, but they've progressively become a leading player. And then this is mainly this survey mainly of US companies, but nonetheless we can read across, can't we? And then the other one, it's somewhat in the bucket with Microsoft Azure, is Salesforce.
Oh yes.
So we all think of Salesforce as a customer management tool, but they've moved into the procurement space too. So Salesforce, Microsoft Azure, interesting, I think, in terms of the way the market's going. And then the fifth one, surprise, surprise, in-house tools.
Oh, in-house tools.
A little bit depressing, really, isn't it? After 30, 40 years, maybe 40 years of procurement software.
Cobbled together clunky in-house tools, as it's known in the trade.
Yeah, that don't integrate, that have a green screen and you have to type in code to make them work.
Some internal systems, Ed, are pretty good. They're not always clunky.
Oh, that's just because you're sitting on the fence.
Yes.
I think you need stronger views, Rich. Most in-house systems are rubbish, but we're not going to do a big thing on IT today because there doesn't seem to be much news out there, does there, Rich? I don't think.
Just outside the top 40, I'm sure Zip will be there, won't they? Ready to climb into the top 5 next time.
I need to pee.
I've got another news from Supply Chain Dive, which is New Balance, the shoe maker, is set to discontinue the use of kangaroo leather by the end of 2024. Who knew? The sportswear manufacturer joins Nike and Puma, both of which pledged earlier this year to curb their use of kangaroo skin. This is from Lara Ewan, senior editor. New Balance will no longer use kangaroo skins in its footwear. The Boston-based athletic wear giant has added kangaroo to its updated 2023 Restricted Substances Manual. The company currently seeks to minimize usage of kangaroo leather, and it will stop producing any footwear containing kangaroo leather by the end of 2024. In March, both Puma and Nike announced they would discontinue the use of kangaroo leather. But the battle against the use of kangaroo skins in fashion has seen some notable victories in 2023. You didn't know this, did you? But including the reintroduction of the Kangaroo Protection Act in Congress in the US, which would ban the sale of kangaroo skin, which will diminish the financing of the commercial massacres of kangaroos in their native habitats in Australia. This move leaves Adidas alone in the field as the last major footwear company still selling shoes made of kangaroo skin. Although some smaller companies such as Japan's Mizuno have also continued the practice, according to the release.
Oh dear, I'm going to have to change my running shoes because I use Mizuno running shoes.
Italian soccer brand Diadora pledged to go kangaroo-free in 2019. No company is allowed to sell the material in California due to a state ban on the sale of kangaroo skins and parts. So let's hope in Australia that kangaroo populations will bounce back.
Bum bum!
I think kangaroo populations are doing okay in Australia, so this might all be about US protectionism.
Just a bit of news from Peter Smith in his Procurement with a Purpose mid-October newsletter. He's been reading a report from water and waste management company Veolia, based on an extensive survey of over 200 US firms. Basically, this survey, in short, looks at Scope 3 emissions management. Scope 3, for those that don't know, relates to your inbound supply chain, what your suppliers are doing. And it said less than half of them, have specific projects that identified to achieve their 5 to 10 year goals. So basically at least half the firms setting their targets for 2025 to 2035 have no idea how they're going to achieve it. Because they've all, basically what he's saying is, and what they're finding is, though they've set themselves big, ambitious goals to reduce their emissions in their supply base, how the hell will they ever achieve it?
Who'd have thought it? Big, audacious goals which have no plans behind them.
All the time I've worked, I've never, ever seen that. I'm lying.
Well, in other news, it's a Supply Chain Live in London, 26th to the 27th of September. I was going to do a full depth review on this, but I looked on their website and it just says this event has ended. Join us in 2024. So we won't be talking about that. And there was a big blue button to press if you wanted to sponsor the event in 2024. But the procurement events never end, though, Ed, do they? Because next up, it's the Supply Chain Excellence Awards 2023, which is celebrating 27 years of true supply chain excellence.
What does that mean? Why do people put these words at the beginning? True, that's just a bit of self-validation. This is a real award ceremony, everybody. I know CIPS had one with 37 awards the other week, but we're going to have one with 45 awards. They'll all be legitimate.
And let's hope that there is a very fine winner for best haircut. So that's the news.
Super!
So now it's Ask Rich and Ed.
Woo.
So firstly, from Emilio Sancho, and this is probably one for Nick when he comes on later, in Madrid, my company has recently gone through a change of ownership, which has resulted in the virtually the complete change of senior management. How do we reintroduce procurement to these stakeholders?
Ooh, interesting. if it's reintroduced, there is some level of understanding in the business amongst the rank and file. But there's a concept that's been around for quite a long while, referred to as procurement marketing. And that's not buying of marketing services, but that's marketing procurement as a sort of value-added activity in the business. The approach to making people aware of procurement is not to just go and engage people, but actually to put a sort of marketing plan together. Just think about how procurement activities fit with the strategy of the business, going back to the senior management, through to how you're going to engage and who your stakeholders are, and what sort of messages you're going to send. Think about how procurement brings value.
I think you're right. It's what fundamentally, what is the proposition? What are you bringing to the table? Yeah. What is it that your new stakeholders are going to be looking for? Whether it's cost or risk or technology or better relationships with suppliers or whatever it might be.
Or it could be something in the market, couldn't it? It could be CSR related or risk related or supply chain related. So I think it's really all conversations will start with thinking about your end customer, your stakeholder, and what it is that matters to them.
Okay. Next question is from Davey Thompson in the UK. In a recent tender for consulting support, one supplier's price was significantly lower than any other bid. It was 300k versus around 700k. Their understanding of the spec seemed to be good and their bid was well written. Their resources seemed sound. Should I choose them, or might there be risks in doing so?
Ooh. Yes, choose them, I say. Sounds like they're a lot cheaper. If it's that different, facts and data, isn't it? The starting point for me is to look at the company and look at what the company's operating margins are, what the revenues are, etc. Think about what their overhead costs are. Get as much data as you can about them as an organisation, because there are big differences in consultancy between the cost base. So if you think of a big blue chip, PwC or Accenture or Ernst & Young or Deloitte, is that they do carry very large overheads and they have a partner profit model. So you may find their natural operating overhead is much bigger than smaller, nimbler consultancies.
Also, are they offshoring certain elements? The other thing you could do is also talk to the other suppliers about their bids and say, well, we've received a bid which is less than half of yours. How can that be? And that might give you some clues as to what the differences are as well.
But it's a sort of questioning, isn't it? But just because something's cheaper doesn't mean that it's lesser.
No.
The economics for that supplier may be different. They might change the way they operate.
Okay. The next one is from Pat Dosh in Australia. One of my suppliers, this is a story we've heard many times. One of my suppliers has a salesperson who simply annoys me. In fact, I can't stand him. They have, however, just put in a bid for an extension to a contract, which is not the best bid, but it would be very easy to implement as they are the incumbent. Should I go out of my way to choose the better bid, knowing that it will cause more work for the business, but give me the satisfaction of getting rid of this company and their salesperson?
Stop right there before you go any further. The meatloaf there, for those that don't know, you have to be objective in procurement. It's not about personalities and whether you hate the rep or like the rep or somewhere in the middle, or I don't know, they've got funny haircuts, they've got tattoos on their face. It doesn't matter. What matters is the product and the service, and what matters is the business. In extremis, if it's not working, then you can ask for a change. I've done it in my career because I just felt they weren't helpful. I think less about personality, more about not working hard enough. I think you have to be very diplomatic.
Even if they had a CIPS award-winning haircut,
yes,
they might not be the right person. So do that. The other thing, of course, is if you go through all that hell of changing supplier, then you might find out that the sales guy then joins the company that you've just resourced to, because that supplier is probably thinking, they had a really good sales guy in the previous supplier. Let's see if we can get them on board. So you might end up through all that and end up with the same guy. Final question for today. This is from Ernest Cleverly in Durham in the UK. Do I need the CIPS qualification to progress as a procurement professional, Ed?
No, I haven't got a CIPS qualification.
And neither have I. And look at us.
Yes, look at us. Look at our success. Look, we're making podcasts in our dotage. Depends, doesn't it? In some jobs, it matters. It matters in the public sector. I don't think, personally, from my experience, it particularly matters in the private sector. I think lots of employers say it would be nice if you had a CIPS qualification. I think it is useful if you don't have necessarily a qualification previously or experience, or much experience, shall we say, or you've done an appropriate degree or an NVQ qualification or whatever. You don't need it for a lot of organisations, I don't think, if you have the experience. When I went for my interview with Pricewaterhouse originally, what they were most interested in from me was the experience I had.
Yeah.
They were less interested in the qualifications. But I had a lot of experience in best practice, if you like, procurement.
If you're an old lag with a bit of experience, maybe not. But if you're new to procurement, new to the profession, then CIPS qualifications may be a good thing to have. I don't think there's a hard and fast answer.
No, I don't think so.
So let's move on to our next topic, which is stakeholder management. And let's introduce our special guest star, Mr. Nick Ford.
I'm really pleased to be here, actually, with two procurement gods.
So Ed, please introduce our guest star.
So it's great to have Nick on, because the good news for me and you, Rich, is Nick is slightly older than us.
Even older than us. Hell.
Nick is, like us, a procurement old lag, a procurement lifer. I've known Nick for a very, very, very long time. Nick's background is electronics procurement, management with ICL, worked in the UK, and then miraculously, I don't know how he pulled this one off, he then went to work in California, of all places, for several years. Subsequently, worked for, a bit like us, I think, worked with a technology company, I2, I think it was, in a sales role across Europe. He's worked for various consultancies, Accenture, PwC, and I think he's got a full house. If he was playing bingo, I think he could take off every consultancy, big and small. And then from there, worked in procurement outsourcing with exchanging procurement services, which we've all touched on at some point in our careers. I guess a synopsis of Nick: procurement, sales, customer management professional. Yeah, Nick's got particular skill around, second to none, around stakeholder management. So that's where we're going to go today.
Question number one then, is this just a bunch of consultancy mumbo jumbo, or is it actually useful at all, Nick?
That's total mumbo jumbo, Rich, really. It's a passion of mine, as Ez says, really. I think it's a part of the sort of management process that's disregarded, really. Senior procurement professionals probably spend about 10, 20% of their time with suppliers. And 80 or 90% of the time is working with internal stakeholders and justifying their department's existence and putting business cases together to expand their capabilities. So you've got that sort of backdrop where procurement wants to have a seat at the table, and so a lot of that contains the management of internal stakeholders. With suppliers, you've got technologies like technology tools like SRM, supplier collaboration, supplier innovation tools. So you've got all this stuff that helps you to manage your suppliers better, but you spend a disproportionate of your time not managing the suppliers and focusing on the internal stakeholders. And then really for those internal stakeholders, I think it's important to have some sort of rigor around managing those stakeholders.
So is it just waffling on with your internal customers or stakeholders? Is it chatting to them? Is it just building relationships? Or is there a science to it? Are there sort of some tools and techniques that we can be using?
Yeah, the good thing about this, Richard, it's sort of free as well, as long as you've got the right tools.
Cheap as crisps.
This is not a massive investment, but it's about getting a structure together to look at where your stakeholders are and where you want them to be. So it's like a three-part process, really. You've really got to understand who currently are the stakeholders that we need to involve. And then these lovely 2x2 type diagrams, which us consultants love our 2x2s.
Love a 2x2.
You can then map those stakeholders as to whether they're supportive of the project, whether they need to be signing off the project, whether they need to just be consulted, or whether they're just sort of on the sidelines, but we need to keep them sort of sweet, really. It sounds very academic and theoretical, but it's quite simple, really, choosing what those axes are and then placing where those stakeholders are.
So, Nick, do you think that's, to some stakeholders and some people in the business, that could come across a bit Machiavellian, couldn't it? It's like, so I've looked out who the stakeholders are, and it's, I don't know, Wendy Smith in whatever function, and I put her down as not supportive. That sounds a bit crafty and underhand. And
I mean, there's two ways of doing it. It just depends what the culture of the organisation is. You could go to Wendy and say, I understand at this point in time, where you are on this. And, I want to work with you over the next 6, 12 months to not change your mind, but to bring you on this journey. Or you can use it as a sort of tool for your own team and not share that with Wendy Smith, but still do something about it with Wendy. It's about understanding where your stakeholders are at the moment and then where you need them to be successful on the project. Then you can start to put individual plans in place that address that. You'll have some people who are really supportive and they need to be taken on the journey. You'll get some stakeholders who are completely opposed to it, and you need to do different stakeholder type tactics to suit the different needs.
So I had a guy called Dave Derailer. How would you deal with him? So he's absolutely adamant this is not going to go ahead. How do you deal with Dave Derailer?
This comes back to that question in one of our previous episodes, Rich. Should I ever punch a stakeholder?
Yeah, an interesting concept. That's pretty extreme, but I've never got to that point yet. So for Dave Derailer, it's about really understanding what his concerns are on the project. Is it cost? Is it implementation? Is it going to affect his budget? Is it going to impact his team? Does he need to throw a load of resource at something that he's not going to get a benefit out of? And then to work with him to start knocking those objections down one by one and take him on that journey with you. You know, if you've got a plan in place for a certain individual like him, at least you can do something about it. You know, do you get them involved in meetings, the comms? Do you show them the benefits? You know, even putting a resource plan in place for him that shows what he needs to do to help you to achieve this project. There's a lot of sort of tools that you can use to get these stakeholders on board.
Because I think there's two parts to this, Nick, isn't there? There's one is like what it means to the business.
Yeah.
I think the other is what's a win for them.
Yes. What's in it for them? What's in it for procurement? And what's in it for the bigger picture across the business as well? And that comes down to the capabilities as well that you need in your department to face off to some of these, you know, difficult business partners.
So another character I've met, as well as Dave, was Bob Passive Aggressive. Now, Bob always gave the view that he was actually positive and for the project, but actually, deep down, he wasn't. How do you deal with Bob Passive Aggressive?
Yeah, probably more difficult than Dave Derailer, actually, because Bob's got a different agenda. Again, you've got to really work with him to really get to the bottom of, you know, what's going on behind the scenes. If he, you know, he's saying he's fully supportive, and I think that's where the skills come into it as well, because, you know, you need a certain type of individual to face off to some of these difficult stakeholders, customer-facing people that really can talk Bob's language and Dave's language. And that takes a different individual with somebody that's running maybe an operations team or a performance management team. So these are like customer-facing roles, really, and you've got to be able to have the skills to manage both Bob and Dave.
Yeah, I'm glad that with Dave Derailer, you got the cycling reference in, which appeals to me.
I remember I was running a large procurement department at a major bank. I remember going to the CFO at the time and trying to justify why I put my best 5 procurement people into business relationship and stakeholder management roles. Sometimes it's difficult to justify, especially if you put in specific people in those sort of stakeholder roles as well.
So what about when you've got the stakeholders, you've mapped them out, you understand what they're like, but they still won't play ball? What happens then?
I think it's a bit of a war of attrition, Ed, really, because you've got to get them, you know, to as close as to the point you want to, making them feel sort of important and wanted. It's getting them involved where necessary on the decision making, and sometimes it isn't easy. You know, so it is. Sometimes it really is as hard a work as it is in delivering the project. You know, because sometimes this is all wrapped up in change management. You know, and they say, "Oh, we'll do a bit of stakeholder mapping, and we're done." That's ticking the box of change management. It's got to be an ongoing process. It's not something you do at the start and the end of a project, because some stakeholders are typically, you know, a bit prickly.
Yeah, so you just wear them down, basically. Be nice, be good, deliver on your promise. Just unrelenting, really.
Exactly. Yeah, overperform on this stuff as well. Yeah.
So is your aim with, you know, with your 2x2? Is your aim to presumably get everybody up into the supportive box, or actually is it no? You don't need to. You can just move them out. Yeah. You know, reduce their influence or whatever.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, in the top right-hand corner, you would have the real decision-making stakeholders that you want want to be on board. But then there's some stakeholders that you just want to keep, just informed of the project. Some you need to consult now and again, and then others you just need to communicate with. So you don't need everybody on the top up right-hand quartile.
Some of the art is recognising people who will never be supportive, reduce their influence or damage to the programme, hold them there and try and minimise their effect on the programme. Because all people are different, aren't they? We're all human.
Are we human or are we dancer?
My view is you can use this when as in a business as usual environment. On a category manager, he or she could use it, or the CPO could use it, or procurement director could use it, whether they're doing a big program, but it's using those same techniques and just doing it on a regular basis.
An important question, Nick, when it comes to stakeholder: rump or ribeye, or a vegan alternative?
I'm going to try and give an intelligent answer to that.
Fork or your hands? Fork, knife, fork, hands, chopsticks.
Isn't there some sort of pre-processed meat that you can get now that is 3D printed and that type of thing? Is that
pour in a glass, drink it? So that's 4.
Those your 2x2, Richard.
So if you had a lower cost budget, would it be Bernie in or Beefeater? I can go all day with these.
I'll probably go Bernie in, yeah.
Bernie in?
Because of the all-you-can-eat salad bar, I would think.
Oh, nice.
If you just had a very small, a very short timescale project, would you prefer the 1 minute steak?
No, I'd go for the flash fry.
Right, over to you, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. So on a serious note, turning to the topic, so what about training of procurement people then? Because what sort of stuff is done to help procurement people, or what should be done?
I think it's the sort of the softer skills, the sort of relationship management skills, a bit like basically salespeople. So you're looking at more of a sales or relationship management type of skills.
And we have talked about this in the past about how salespeople are quite different to procurement people generally. So is there a sort of hybrid person there? Ideally, you're looking for this hybrid sales procurement person, sort of part human, part dancer.
Yes, you've got to really understand the stakeholder and the internal client's business. If you were running an IT category and you turn up to a meeting with a CTO or a CIO and you know nothing about the category, you're not going to last an hour. Your ticket to the table is about really understanding the category. So if you've got the category background, that gets you in. And then it's the softer skills, I think, that enables you to manage those stakeholders, that builds that relationship, just like an account exec would do it from a sales point of view.
That's interesting, because I worked in a procurement organisation quite recently, and I actually changed these roles because they had a bunch of people who were called business partners, and they were literally go-betweens. They literally had no category expertise whatsoever. So immediately they had very little credibility with the stakeholders, and they were just called business partners, and they just floated around the business having chats. You've got to be a category expert, or you've got to be part of a sector, category sector team, understand your sector, have something to bring to the party. You can't just be a business partner without any skills. That's where you're coming from as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I worked for a very large consultancy a number of years ago, sort of invented the whole concept of internal business partners. If those business partners are just mailboxes or just filling in spreadsheets and coordinating demand or trying to capture demand, then they're not really adding value to the business. I think if you're a true business partner with your stakeholders, you've got to be adding value. You've got to understand either their business or the subject matter expert.
The table stakes are knowing the category or knowing the activity. If you're implementing IT in procurement, you have to understand it. If it's doing IT or FM, you need to understand the topic well. But the thing that seems to be missing is training for procurement experts or individuals engaging with internal stakeholders. So that's influencing skills, all of that sort of stuff. That doesn't seem to be very well developed. We expect good procurement people to do that stakeholder management, as well as understand technically, as well as be able to cover legal stuff and finance stuff, because it's quite multidisciplinary if you're really good at it. I contrast that to salespeople. They are extensively trained in engagement, aren't they?
And it's seen as a soft skill and not necessary. There's got to be some investment and training and education around this.
Yeah. When I was at one of the big consultancies, influencing skills, winning friends and influencing people typically that's referred to. And I think that's the best training I've ever done. I don't suspect many procurement functions do a lot of training in those softer skills. Any final thoughts, Nick, on on stakeholder management and what our listeners should be thinking about.
What we should be thinking about is this is definitely not a one-off exercise. This is something that should be part of good business practice within a high-performing procurement team. You know, there is a process and a set of tools and techniques that you can use, which are not too complex, not too complicated, not too technical, that enables you to have some sort of structure to managing stakeholders. And then thirdly, you know, just to keep it going and having the right skills in place to manage it going forward, really. So it's not a one-off exercise. It's putting a process in place, and then it's having the right skills to do it on an ongoing basis.
Well, thank you very much for your time this morning, Nicholas. That was very good. A nice little run through what people need to know about stakeholder management. Excellent. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here.
And the cheque will be in the post.
Thank you.
When the royalties start flowing.
In about 25 years' time, when we work out how to monetize our podcast.
So, next time, what are we going to talk about next time?
Could we pick up on legal stuff? Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think that might be interesting? Just contracting. It's a sort of bit of a dark art to a lot of us in procurement. It's been a long slog to really learn all the stuff around contract. Even though I did law as part of my degree, but maybe contracting might be an interesting.
Okay. Sounds good. So we'll do a bit of news. We'll do a bit more Q&A because we've got a few more questions to answer, and we'll talk about legal. That sounds like interesting topics for next time.
Yeah, brilliant.
So thanks to Nick for today. We will see you all again next time.
Brilliant.
Ta-ta.
Ta-ta. Ta-ra. See you soon.
So we didn't get time to talk about things that annoy us in procurement.
LinkedIn.
What, just LinkedIn?
Or linked up, as we should say. So people marketing to me, I just get a constant barrage of stuff like, can I be your friend? And then I get an immediate message saying, oh, I'd like to. How are you doing with such and such? How are you doing with this? How do you do? I can help you. I can give you loads of leads for your business and all that. I'm just thinking, oh, for goodness sake, stop it.
Stop it.
You really think you're going to sell to me by sending me a LinkedIn message? No. I do get inundated with stuff from India as well, people who are wanting to do our website and our promotion and all that. I'm just like, oh. Procurement says no.
Things are coming up saying, you need to upgrade. I'm going to stop recording in case it all